So, hey guys, are you frustrated with where you're at right now? Maybe stunted in your progress? Well, if you are, I want to recommend a place for you to go called Growth Day. Growthday.com/ed. It is the number one personal development app on the planet. It's got all kinds of high performance techniques in there, courses, accountability, journaling, live speeches from some of the top influencers in the world, including me. It's an overall environment to change your life. Growthday.com/ed. Really excited today to talk to you about your road to success, just your road in your entire life, and the things you should expect if you're going to choose the road less traveled. I was reading a couple lines from The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. It's a great poem. If you've not read it, you should. But he says, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled." And I think if you're going to pursue success in your life, you have to decide you're going to be on a road that most people are not on. And a lot comes with taking that road. And I think, a lot of times success is glamorized on social media right now. It looks like it's about Lamborghinis and private jets and great dinners and amazing stuff like that. But the truth is, the journey to success, especially as an entrepreneur or even as an athlete or in really any endeavor, can be a very painful journey. And you can feel very alone. And it's designed that way. And so it often bothers me when I hear people say, I need this support from my spouse or my friends, or I've got haters, or no one understands me, or I'm getting all this rejection and negative feedback from people. I've got haters. That's the road you're on. Those are the signs you're on the road less traveled. Those are the signs you're on the path that most people aren't going to be on, that you're going to a place most people aren't going to go in their lives. And so what comes with deciding to be great, deciding to do something awesome with your life, is all of those things. It's the other road, the road that almost everybody you know is on, that road's well lit. It's beautiful. There's all kinds of great scenery. There's not a lot of bumps in the road, not a lot of potholes. Right? Everything's wonderful on that road. It's also very crowded. The road to success, the road less traveled, let me just tell you something. That road, it's windy. It's up and down. There's potholes. You're going to have breakdowns. You're going to have blowouts. You're going to have days that you can't even get it started again. It's a dark road. It's not well lit. It's all kinds of bad things on that road. That's the road to success. And you're not going to see a lot of people there. And then there's going to be a few times you're going to hit a yield sign. And everything in you is going to tempt you to yield to the road everybody else is on. Because it looks so good over there, right? Everyone's there. It's well lit. It's sunny out. Your road, there's ice. It's snowing. It's raining. It's dark. It's windy. It's massive ups and downs. All the breakdowns. And when you hit the yield sign, the reason I'm making this message today, I don't care what level of that road you're on or how far down. By the way, on the road everybody else is on, there's navigational equipment, there's directions. Everyone kind of goes in the same direction. The road less traveled, the road to success, sometimes you feel like you don't have a map. Sometimes you feel like you don't have any direction or sense of direction. And you get so far down it sometimes like, what am I doing? Well, let me just say something to you. When you get down that road, right? You're going to hit yield signs regularly. They're going to try to get you to yield and give in and yield back to the other road. And it's your decision right now when you're listening to me today to say, I will not yield. I will not give in. My will to win, my will to do something great is not for sale. Because I'm going to tell you, this road is difficult. And I often find it amazing when people say, I'm getting all this resistance. I'm getting all this rejection. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. Let me tell you what comes on the road to success. And I know this isn't pretty, but maybe for some of you say, oh, that means I'm in the right place. If recently, at any point in the last 12 months, you've experienced doubt, like lots of doubt, you're probably on the road less traveled. There's no doubts on the easy path. There's no doubts just going to a job every day, collecting a check, going about your business, not trying new things, not challenging yourself, not growing, not contributing. There's no doubt there. What are you going to doubt? Everybody's doing it. Right? So if you're getting doubt, that means you're on the road less traveled. If you have a lot of fear or anxiety on the road you're on, or if you've experienced those emotions recently about what you're doing, you feeling like an imposter, like you have imposter syndrome, like nobody knows, I don't really know what I'm doing. You're on the road that I think you should be on, the right road, the road less traveled. If you felt anything like rejection, like lots of rejection, you get all kinds of rejection on the road. By the way, you want to go get a beautiful relationship in your life and you're on a road to that, it comes with rejection. You want to build an amazing business, it comes with rejection. You want to build an amazing body, it comes with rejection. So if you experience that, You're on the right road. You're on the road less traveled. You don't get rejection on the road to doing nothing. And so the very fact, what I'm trying to get you to understand is the very fact that you're experiencing these things means you're on this road that I've been on, that most of your heroes have been on, that the people that make a difference, the people that change the world, that change their own world, that change their family's generational tree forever. Those people, by the way, the people that you know that are the most happy and fulfilled at some point had to go down this road to achieve those things. Maybe if you felt a lot of isolation, like you're alone. I think the number one thing I felt often on my road and my journey, and even to this day, is I feel alone. People don't understand me, right? Just get ready, by the way. If you're going to do something great with your life, you're going to be controversial. People are going to talk about you. You're going to feel like no one understands you. You're going to feel like no one else is coming with you. Even when you're surrounded by a big team, even when you've got a bunch of people working with you, oftentimes you feel very alone. It's a very lonely road. You know what happens when you're alone and you're lonely? You learn a lot about yourself. You know, when you're at a big party and it's crowded and noisy, and there's all kinds of people around you, everyone's having a great time, you don't learn a lot about yourself then. It's the times that you're alone and you do feel a little bit isolated is when you actually dig deep into yourself and you find things out about you that you never knew existed. And you work through pain, you work through trauma, you work through difficulties. You're on the right road. You feel any anxiety? You have any anxiety you've experienced recently? You're on the right road. So I'm actually telling you that these things that seem like the negative things are actually indications. They're actually green lights. A green light is doubt. A green light is fear. A green light is rejection. A green light is isolation. A green light is anxiety. And then here's the other thing that happens when you're on this road, because it is so difficult and treacherous. You start really beginning to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And if you've had any occasion in the last recent little while or in the last 12 months of your life to ask yourself, is this worth it? That contemplation of whether it's worth it or not means you're on the right road. It means you're on the right road. See, people that are on that other road, they're not asking themselves if it's worth it because they're making no sacrifice. There's no commitment. Remember this, with no commitment, with no sacrifice, ultimately in your life, there's never any freedom. And so where you really are is you're on a road to freedom, spiritual freedom, emotional freedom, financial freedom, physical freedom, relationship freedom. You're on the road to have a freedom of choice of your emotions, by the way, as well. Now, do I think the entire journey has to be painful? Absolutely not. Am I saying there isn't amazing moments and amazing highs, and you can have blissful dissatisfaction on the road, and you can enjoy your life still on this road? 1,000% on the road less traveled, you can enjoy your life. You can have beautiful experiences and amazing relationships. But the truth of the matter is, you see all that on social media all the time. Every once in a while, somebody's got to tell you, and also there's some of this other stuff. Also, there's some pain. Also, there's setbacks. By the way, the other thing that happens on this road is 2 or 3 times a year, there's just a massive catastrophe and crisis. I'm just telling you, I have not had a year go by in my pursuit to my dreams. There's not been a crisis or a catastrophe every 3 or 4 or 5 months, couple times, 2, 3, 4 times a year. If you haven't had a catastrophe or a crisis in your life in the last 12 months, you're not doing something great. You're not trying to grow. You're not trying to change things. You're literally trying to change your life, change your family's life forever. So these things come with it. Again, I want to be clear. There's all kinds of amazing experiences. And having been on this road, I can tell you the beautiful experiences and the emotions and the breakthroughs and the pride that comes with overcoming these challenging things, overcoming doubt, overcoming fear, overcoming rejection. That's the juice of life. It's where all the juice is. It's where all the goodies are. It's ultimately where all the rainbows are, is on the more difficult road. You can't get a rainbow if there isn't a storm. And so I just feel like so often people, they listen to podcasts like mine and they think, man, my gosh, it's like, most people aren't going through, everyone that's gone anywhere great in their life has had their version of this adversity in their life. And like I said, you're going to be controversial. You decide to do something great, you've decided people aren't going to understand me. People aren't going to relate to me. Listen to me. Don't be so caught up in these external voices that are gnawing at you or talking bad about you. You got to listen to your inner voice. That inner voice that's been with you since you were a little boy or a little girl that says you were born to do something great with your life. Here's what I know about you if you're on this road less traveled. You've always known you're supposed to do something great. There's been this little part of you when you're a little boy or a little girl, and it just whispered to your spirit. It whispered to your soul, you're supposed to do something awesome. You're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be blissful. You're supposed to make a difference in other people's lives. And it's okay that you may not know where this is going or what it's going to look like or even where the end of the road is. It's okay. But all your life you've known this. Here's what's crazy. So have all the other people on the road everybody's on. They heard the same things when they were a little boy or a little girl. They have the same calling. They have the same emotions. They had the same decisions. And they yielded. And there's a bunch of them over there that yield. And let me tell you, they live with. See, when they get to the end of their road, it wasn't real bumpy. The weather was pretty good. When they get to the end of their road someday, it's the end of their life. They're going to look back at their life with regret. They're going to look back and say, I played it safe. I didn't take any risks. Here's the truth. I lived my life scared. I lived my life afraid I might crash. I might burn. People might talk bad about me. I might be a failure. And so I just rather just kind of cruise. In fact, at some point in my life on the road everybody's on, I just flipped on the cruise control. Took my hand off the gas pedal. Hand off the steering wheel. And it was all about cruise control and hitting the brakes. The road you're on, it's beautiful. It's more beautiful than you realize. You're going to see things you would have never seen. You're going to experience things you would have never experienced. You're going to achieve things that you would have never achieved. And you'll get to the end of your life. And by the way, you may not get where you want to go. You may not get all the way to whatever this place is you think you're going. And for some of you, you don't even know what it is. You just know it's not where you are now. You just know it's not where I am now. This is not what I was made for. This is not what I was born for. And I'm just going to get on this road. I wasn't born for this. I'm going to get on this other road. I'm just going to start driving. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'll take a left turn and a right turn. I'll do whatever I got to do. But I know I wasn't born to be where I am right now. And I may not have the exact map, the navigational equipment. Nobody's supporting me. But I know I wasn't born for where I am now. And you may get to the end of that life, the end of that road, and not even get to a place you thought you would get. But here's what you won't have. You won't have regret. See, I don't think in life we regret the things we try to do and we fail at. I think the regrets in life are the acts of omission, the things we didn't do, that we omitted from our life, the opportunities we didn't chase, the dreams we didn't pursue, the challenges we didn't face up to, the curiosities and the learning and the growth we could have had that we just didn't pursue because most other people don't. Most other people don't. And so you're not going to have people relate to you. Now, listen, on this road, you have to be willing to course correct. You got to check in with yourself once in a while. Is this still my current dream? Where am I heading? Where am I going? What does this mean? And I also think you have to just decide, I'm going to stop trying to get support of all the people around me. If everybody around you is supporting you, you're probably not trying to do something very big. You really aren't. Because most people don't want you to see you get too successful or too happy because it'll expose them. So don't let people with small lives and small thoughts project their limitations onto you because they're trying to get you to yield to get on their road. I miss you. You ever hear that? I miss you. I miss the way it used to be. I miss this. They're basically saying, come on, get in the back seat, take your hands off the damn steering wheel, quit hitting the accelerator, and let's just cruise around for a while. And you inside you knows that you weren't born to cruise. You were born to experience life and to have great memories. No great memories come from something that everybody does every single day. The monotony of life. Now, what would I recommend you do to pursue this dream a little bit better? I think you need to find a mastermind or a group of people that you can be around that support your thinking. Listen to podcasts like mine, especially mine, on a weekly basis. And the other thing is, when you're on this road, one thing that will light this road up for you is service. When you're feeling most helpless on this road, get the most helpful. Do everything you can to help other people. When you begin to just serve other people, contribute to other people, encourage other people. See, maybe it's just an act of encouraging words that you give to somebody today. That act of service to another human being increases your vibrational frequency. And when you increase your vibrational frequency, you face less resistance because things begin to become attracted to you as opposed to you having to pursue everything all the time. Acts of service, acts of contribution in your life at every single level along the way. From the person listening to this who's making negative $10,000 a year in their bank account right now, and they're piling through money and losing money, to someone making $100 million a year. Your pathway to more illumination, to more light on where to go next, is through the acts of service to other people. What that does is it lightens your life. It enlightens your life and other people. But the other thing it does is it increases your vibrational frequency, and things begin to become more attracted to you rather than you having to chase everything in your life. I want to remind you, as your friend, the reason I do this show is that I believe there are millions of people on the wrong road. Millions of people on the wrong road. And I also believe there are millions of people on the right road who don't know it. Who don't know it because it doesn't look like that on social media. It doesn't feel like it with the people around us. Remember this, when you're in the midst of doing something great with your life, it typically doesn't feel like it when you're doing it. It typically does not feel like it when you're doing it. It's only in hindsight that you look back and say, wow, that was amazing. I can't believe I overcame that. And sometimes the most chaotic parts of our lives, the busiest parts of our lives, the times where we feel like we have the least amount of freedom are the happiest. If I asked you to think back to some of the most, chaotic times of your life where you had the least amount of freedom and some of the most difficult times and you were the busiest, maybe you were the most happy. See, if there's a mother listening to this and I said, what about that pregnancy that you had? That discomfort of carrying that baby, and maybe you got sick and you had different, issues with being pregnant and the discomfort of it and the birth process. No man can possibly relate to it. I'm not even going to try. But that was one of the most difficult times of your life, yet it's the time that you're the most grateful for and you feel the most blessed. Those of you that were in college at one time and you were crazy studying and cramming for tests and had a job to support yourself and 2 jobs or 3 jobs and you're out of control. And you look back at that time and you go, man, I loved that time in my life. Isn't that interesting? Those of you that have had to have 1 or 2 or 3 jobs at any given time and it was very, very difficult and you're busy and scattered and everyone thought you were crazy. Some of the happiest times of your life. So sometimes chaos and difficulty and doing something great, all we feel is the chaos and difficulty. We don't know we're doing something great. It's only in hindsight that we look back and go, that was when I was the most happy. And so the truth is this. What you really want is freedom. What you really want is freedom. You want a freedom in your relationship, freedom financially, freedom in your career, freedom in your emotions. And I'm going to tell you the pathway to freedom, ironically, is total commitment. Most people think, wow, if I commit to this relationship, I lose all my freedom. Nothing could be further from. Once you've committed to something, you're completely free now to act on that decision. Lack of commitment is a jail, is bondage, because you've got nothing to decide to do with your life, to do something great. Total commitment to a business you're starting or pursuing or a new hobby this creates total, once you've made the commitment, all these other options are gone and now you've got complete freedom to pursue that decision, to pursue that road. And so what you're really on the road less traveled is the pathway to freedom and whatever that means to you. And nobody needs to understand it. And you don't need anybody's permission. You don't need anyone's permission. The cool thing about our road, there's no speed limit. There's no speed limit. You can go as fast or as slow as you want to. And I like that part of it. I'm just going to tell you right now, you were born to be on the road less traveled. And I want to challenge you today to know that when these things come up, these are indicators you're on the right road, not the wrong road. I want you to remember that today. And the last thing I'll tell you is this. Don't yield. Don't yield. There's going to be all kinds of temptation, maybe even today, to yield to the road everyone's traveling on. See, we make micro decisions every day. Maybe your overall journey's on the road less traveled, but today, I'm going to be on the road with everybody else. Today, I'm not going to work out. Today, I'm taking the road everybody. Today, I'm not going to eat great. Today, I'm not going to make all my contacts. Today, I'm not going to make a total commitment. I'll get back on the other road tomorrow. See, this road you're on needs to be a lifestyle. Needs to be a lifestyle. Needs to be a commitment. that there are very few moments where I'm on the road with everybody else. If you're on this road the majority of the time, eventually the road gets lit up. Eventually it produces a pathway to freedom. And eventually your dreams. And by the way, you'll begin to achieve dreams you never thought you even had before, because these left and right turns, and around every corner there's a new dream and a new vision and a new experience, because you're going to start to go faster and faster. You're going to vibrate at a higher and higher frequency, and all kinds of things. I can just tell you in my own life, I've made dreams happen that I never imagined. I would have never imagined. I have a sister who's diabetic, and she was losing her vision. She actually became legally blind. And I had no idea over the years, while my sister was struggling, she has type 1 diabetes, I had no idea that, as I was working hard and getting rejected and all the negative things that were happening to me, and all the anxiety and all the worry and all the late nights and all the early mornings and all the overdrawn bank accounts and all the difficult times, I thought that dream was to become rich and famous and all that kind of stuff. But the ripple effects of what you can achieve in your life are really amazingly unknown around these corners on the road less traveled. And what happened was, I actually did build a bunch of wealth, and that was cool. And I bought a house in a particular neighborhood. And one time my sister lost her vision to the point where she couldn't drive, and she's a school teacher. She couldn't even teach anymore because she couldn't see the classroom, and she's got diabetic retinopathy. And she was starting to get justifiably depressed. Imagine being able to see, and then you can't. I mean, even just close your eyes for 5 minutes in darkness when you're awake, right? It's one thing to be born without vision, another thing to lose it. And so one night, my mom had called me and was particularly telling me how concerned she was that my sister was just down. And she's living in darkness, and she can't go do what she loves to do, what she was born to do, which was to teach these children. She's an amazing school teacher. And she just loved doing it. My sister's not a rich woman financially, but she had a very rich life of contribution. She lives richly. And my family was very concerned about her. And little did I know, all those years when I was working hard and paying this price, and see, I didn't know what the rewards would be. There's going to be so many dreams happen for you that you can't even imagine right now. And this is an example of one of them. And so although I had become wealthy and I was living in a great neighborhood, it wasn't for the house or the pool or the golf course. I hung up the phone with my mother, and I thought to myself, I need to take a walk. I need to take a walk. I was so hurting for my sister. And as I was walking down this street, I realized, I won't say his entire name, but I realized, oh my gosh, Dr. Chang lives in that house, and he helps people with their vision in their eyes, and he created this laser that helps people, and it's an optometrist. He lives in that house. I want to be crazy if he could help my sister. And I called him. And to fast forward the story, that doctor saved and reversed my sister's blindness. And so my sister now is teaching again, thanks to Dr. Chang. Thanks to Dr. Chang. Now, she doesn't have completely perfect vision where, she's never had any medical issues, but my sister's now functioning again. She can now see her children again. She can see me again. She can see my mom again. She can teach her class again. She can grade papers again. She can do a lot of things. She can't do all of them, but she can do a lot of things that she could never do before this time. And that's because I worked hard all those years, and God was preparing this dream that I didn't even know, that I'd walk and knock on Dr. Chang's door, who happened to be my neighbor. And the only reason I lived there is because I fought through the anxiety. I fought through the doubt. I fought through the fear. I fought through the rejection. I fought through the isolation. I fought through all of that, thinking all these other dreams, and many other dreams came true. But you could have never told me back when I was on that road less traveled and crashing every other day and trying to thinking about yielding every other day, that, hey, Eddie, if you stay on this road 20 years from now, you will help cure your sister's blindness, who's not even blind yet. She's not even blind yet. It's amazing to me that of all the things I went through, that God was preparing this dream that I couldn't even begin to imagine at that time. Is that amazing? And now my sister sees again, because part of the reason is I went on that road. And so did Dr. Chang. And then we met at some point in our neighborhood on the same road, on the exact same street. I ended up on that road because all the roads I took to get there, and he lived in a house on my road, literally on my road. Knocked on his door. Do you think you can help my sister? And he said, I might be able to. And he did. He was able to get her to see again. My sister sees again because I lived on that road, and I lived on that road because of all the lefts and the rights and the yields and the ups and the downs and the corners and the dark times and the crashes and the blowouts. All of that led to the actual physical and literal road I lived on. The person who could save my sister's vision lived at the end of that road. So when I'm telling you that you don't know what dreams are going to come true, you don't know. But I can tell you none of them come true on the road that is well-traveled. All of these micro dreams, ancillary dreams that you will not even dream of right now, you can't even imagine, are going to happen because you're willing to pay that price. You're willing to do something great. You're willing to have a life where you will take risks, where you will do something great. And the benefactors of that will not just be you, it will be the people you love in ways you can't imagine. But someday you'll be telling your story just like I am right now. That's just one of thousands of stories that I could tell you that have come true, dreams that have come true, that weren't even visions of mine because of the road I decided to choose in my life. And so I don't want you to cheat you or your family or your loved ones or anybody else out of all these dreams that you haven't even had yet, all these moments that you can't even imagine yet because you yield to the other road. So please stay on the great road. When I tell you you're born to do something great in your life with big ways and small ways, I mean it, and I know it because I've done it myself.
Today, we're going to talk about patterns. Yes, every human being almost runs like a software program in their mind, and they run these patterns of behavior, patterns of thoughts, patterns of words, patterns of performance. And most of these patterns run in our lives without us being conscious of them. And they steal from us our ability to be happier, to be more joyful, to produce at the highest levels, to engage with people the right way. And they create for us oftentimes in our life a disconnect between what our beliefs are and actually how we behave. We call that cognitive dissonance oftentimes, where we believe one thing, but we often behave differently. And that's because sometimes our patterns can even override our thoughts. And oftentimes in life, if we can just become conscious that we do have these patterns, we begin to evaluate them and be aware of them. We can identify them when they rear their head, and we can overcome them. We can create new patterns that serve us. And so the first thing I'm here to tell you today is that you do run a series of patterns in your life. You have a pattern of behavior. You have a pattern of producing results. There's certain stimulus that cause these patterns to happen for you. And unless you begin to evaluate them and be aware of them when they happen, these patterns begin to really take control of our lives. For some of you, even as I say this, you're nodding your head in awareness. You're sort of aware. I fall into these patterns of when something happens, I begin to think a certain way, which creates another thought and another behavior, and I find myself running this same story again. Or if I get into a disagreement with somebody, a pattern kicks in. Or if I have a failure, a pattern kicks in. If I have a success, a pattern kicks in. And so if we can become aware of these things, it's a breakthrough in our lives. I think today could be one of the more powerful programs I've ever brought to you. It's just becoming aware of what some of these patterns are. Now, before we get into those, I want to talk a little bit about what you really want. You know, often in life, just choosing the emotions we want. We've talked in a lot of my programs about the caliber of our life has everything to do with the caliber of the emotions we experience on a regular level. We are our emotions. And so the first thing I'd ask you to do is to start to use the power of choice in your life. Yes, you get to choose your life. You get to choose how you feel, not other people. There's these illusions in life. We really can't control anything other than our own thoughts, our own behavior, our own patterns. We can't control what other people do, say, or think. And it's this illusion of control oftentimes that we can somehow manipulate other people or manipulate situations that cause us to fall into these patterns. But what we do have the power of in life is we have the power to choose. And I say this to you because I'm somebody just like you. I struggle with the different patterns I have. Some of them serve me, some of them don't. I sometimes engage in thoughts that don't create the right emotions for me, that don't serve me. I know what it's like to be frustrated and angry and depressed and down and lost and fearful and worried. Worry's a big one for me. I love to fall into the pattern of worry when certain circumstances begin to happen. It creates a trigger and a pattern in me. And man, do I love to worry. And so I give you these tools and resources because these are things I too struggle with. I've been able to overcome them by just being aware and choosing. And so the first thing is the power of choice. Finish this sentence for me. I choose to be blissful rather than blank. I choose to be blissful rather than blank. What would your answer be? One of the emotions I challenge you to experience more of in life is bliss. You know, we are the calibration of maybe the 5 emotions we experience on a regular basis. And so if you're experiencing depression, frustration, worry, fear, anxiety, pain on a regular basis, you're gonna have one life. If you're experiencing bliss and fulfillment and ecstasy and joy in your life and contribution, recognition and significance, if you're experiencing love, you experience those emotions, you have a totally different life. We have the power to choose which emotions we want to experience. And so I love the emotion of bliss. I love the word bliss, as you know. I have an audio that's out called Blissful Dissatisfaction. That's a critically acclaimed and highly downloaded audio and video on being both blissfully dissatisfied. Dissatisfied and desiring for more, but in a current state of bliss. I love the word bliss because of its definition. Its definition in Webster's is perfect happiness or joy. I love that. Webster's also says some of the synonyms for bliss are joy, pleasure, ecstasy, delight, happiness, euphoria, heaven, paradise, cloud 9, utopia, Eden. These are all synonyms for the word bliss. I like how all of those sound. Those are the noun versions in the dictionary of bliss. The verb, the action of being blissful, according to the dictionary, is to reach a state of perfect happiness, typically as to be oblivious to everything else. Wouldn't that be amazing, to be in perfect happiness and be oblivious to everything else? That's the verb or the action of being blissful. And the antonym, according to Webster's, to bliss is misery. And the last thing we want to be is feeling misery. So it's the antithesis of misery. So I choose to be blissful rather than what? What if you could choose every day to be blissful? But oftentimes, we don't choose to be blissful because we choose to be right. We choose to win. We choose to be significant. We choose to be in control. We make choices to try to experience other emotions. And by the way, all of these other emotions are typically outside of our control. Winning is outside of our control. Dominating is outside of our control. All of these things are something we can't control, and we choose them over bliss. But what if you just made a conscious decision right now? I choose bliss. I choose to be blissful rather than blank. And it's being aware of the other things you choose so that you can be conscious when you go to choose those things, you go for bliss instead.
So hey guys, as you know, I've partnered up with my good friend Brennan Burchard, who's created the greatest personal development system that has ever been designed, called Growth Day. If you go to growthday.com/ed, you can get all the information. But it's that time of year where everybody's trying to form new habits. They've got new resolutions and goals, and you need an environment and you need some coaches, and you need to be able to do it super inexpensively. And that's where growthday.com/ed comes in. There's everything from journaling to accountability programs, live messages every Monday from myself and other influencers. There's an opportunity for you to get courses that would cost thousands of dollars completely for free. It's incredible. Go to growthday.com/ed and check it out.
And by the way, not making a choice is a choice. A non-decision is a decision. If you don't choose consciously to begin to experience the emotions you want, okay, for me, bliss is very important. Joy is very important. Peace is very important. Contribution is very important. Connection is very important. What are the 5 emotions that if you could choose them, you'd experience on a regular basis? Just take an inventory of that. You don't have to be perfect. They may change. There may be 8. But what are 5 ones right now? Say them out loud to yourself. What are the 5 ones you'd want? Is it love? Is it ecstasy? Is it joy? Is it passion? Is it intensity? Is it focus? Is it peace? Is it faith? What are the emotions you would choose? If you could choose 5 emotions, and begin to tell yourself, I choose to feel blank rather than this. And when you just begin to become conscious of that choice, you've already moved ahead of 99.9% of the world who just responds and reacts and goes into pattern mode all the time. So just choosing gives you an advantage. And by the way, once again, not choosing is a choice. You've decided to go into your pattern. You've decided to let other people dictate to you your emotions. You've decided you have no control over your life by not choosing. So choose. I'd rather be blissful than blank. I'd rather be joyful than blank. I'd rather have ecstasy than blank. What do you choose rather than? So now let's discuss these patterns for a second. Why do we have these patterns? You have patterns because they serve you. There's a payoff to every pattern. And by the way, you say, well, no, because one of my patterns is I slip into worry and then I'm completely unhappy. How's that a payoff for me? It's a payoff for you because it's predictable. It's become your home. And so you don't have any pattern that doesn't give you a payoff. Well, no, because when things don't go my way, I become combative, I become argumentative. That's my pattern. Then I get in a disagreement in my relationship, and then I say things I don't mean. How's there a payoff there for me? There's a payoff because it gets you what you want. Even though you don't know it, it gets you out of the conversation. It gets you maybe to avoid your own responsibility. It gives you the disconnect that somehow you're more comfortable with than dealing with the problem. But I promise you, every pattern you have, both healthy and unhealthy, you have them because there's a payoff for you. So the key to a happier life, the key to a more successful life, is to evaluate our patterns, and when we see them happening, begin to step outside of them and create new ones that serve us. And so what are some of the patterns you have, for example, that don't serve you? So for example, when a difficult situation arises, what is your pattern? What pattern mode do you go into? Do you become more resourceful, more focused, or do you become more fearful, worried, and you begin to make excuses? When you get into a disagreement with a loved one, what is your pattern typically? Do you become more combative? Do you listen less and talk more? Does the pattern begin? You understand what I'm saying? Do you begin to run this program that you run in such a way that it puts you in a state you don't want to be in? When adversity strikes, when someone puts you down, when there's a hater, what pattern mode do you typically kick into? Do you start to repeat other negative thoughts? Do you replay videos in your mind of other people who have also said negative things to you in the past? Or other thoughts you have about yourself that are loathsome, and you begin to stack these thoughts? Oftentimes, one person says something to us negative, and it creates this pattern we run, doesn't it? When we begin to think of another embarrassing moment, another person who saw something negative, we begin to create other negative thoughts about ourselves to stack it. And you say, how's there a payoff for me in that? Because it's what you're used to. It pays you off by reassuring you, you're right, you're a loser. You're right, you're not going to win. There's a payoff because guess what? Now you don't have to do the real work because you were never won anyway because you're this terribly unprepared person. So that's your payoff. And so you have these patterns, don't you? Now some people, their pattern kicks into winning. When someone puts them down, they start to buck up. They start to get resourceful. They start to feed themselves positive thoughts. They're aware that that's there, and they begin to go into a hyper-productive, positive emotion mode. Yes, they do, believe it or not. When adversity strikes for some people, they go into a fearful mode. They begin to think about all the things that could go worse and worse and worse, and they depress themselves. And that pattern creates the very situations you fear. The same is true when we're successful. Sometimes some people, when they become successful, they go into a pattern when they begin to sabotage themselves and slow down and stop the behaviors that got them there. They begin to believe their own press clippings, that they've arrived. They don't have to do the work they used to do. Maybe they begin to fall into patterns where they get their relationships out of sorts, and that's their pattern. Life starts to go well in business. My pattern is every time life goes well in business, I start having issues in my personal life. And they sabotage the business success with their personal life. And that's a pattern they run. If it's happened more than once to you, it's not coincidental, it's a pattern. In my fitness life, you may say, every time I start to get super fit, it seems then I get ill, then I don't go to the gym for a week, then I start eating poorly, and I'm back to where I was. If it's happened more than once, it's a pattern. Right? And so begin to evaluate these patterns you have that don't serve you and simply begin to choose to create new patterns, more empowering patterns, patterns that give you the emotions and the results you want to have in your life. You will be amazed at how many patterns you have. Your response to adversity, fear, success, mediocrity, criticism, strife in a relationship, your nutrition, your faith, all of the different patterns you run. There is such power in beginning to separate and identify these patterns when they begin to repeat. Even as I'm saying it, I can feel you nodding your head. my gosh, I do have a pattern when I'm successful. Every time I climb up a little bit, I start this pattern where I sabotage, or I start to believe too much, or my relationships go sideways. Every time I start to get more fit, I somehow get ill, or I somehow miss a day at the gym, or that's the day my car breaks down. Every time I have a pattern where I accumulate more money, I fall into this pattern where I save, and then I spend it all on something I shouldn't. Or then I do something with money I shouldn't have, or it seems like every time, then a repair comes up, or something with my kids. You're falling into these patterns. There's massive power in beginning to understand that's not who you are. I've done enough training with you. If you haven't listened to my previous work, please go back and listen to it. You are not your possessions. You are not your accomplishments. You are not what other people say you are. You are not what you look like. And guess what else you're not? You are not your patterns. But your life becomes a combination and a result of your patterns. The great thing about us is that we can change these patterns if we identify them. The pattern has no power over you once you know it's a program and a pattern running. The minute you start, you go, I'm doing it again, aren't I? I'm doing this thing I do every time I accumulate money. I'm doing the same thing every time me and my spouse get in a disagreement. I'm doing the same thing every time I'm starting to feel loved by somebody and I push them away. Every time things start to go bad financially, I spiral. Every time there's adversity, I do the same pattern where I start worrying. Every time I get fit, I do the same pattern. When you begin to see these things, you begin to go, my gosh, this isn't who I am. That's not your identity. There's a difference between your identity and your pattern. And the more you begin to build your identity, as I've talked about in my other audios, and be aware of patterns, and then simply ask yourself, when this comes up again in the future, what pattern would serve me? What pattern can I take control of? What would be the steps I need to take that will create the bliss I want, or the win I want, or the production I want? What would the pattern need to be? The pattern immediately, by the way, stops when you identify it. The pattern only hurts you when it runs unconsciously. The pattern loses all its power over you once you see it. It's gone. It can't continue to run once you're aware of it, because all of a sudden you're like, I know what I'm doing, here I go, and you can begin to identify it and make a shift. So this is so critical. Start to ask yourself, am I running one of these patterns? What are some of the ones I typically do that serve me? And what are the ones that don't serve me? And what we do in our life is we compare too much. And so remember this, you're working on your identity, okay? Everybody wears what I would call like a mask, a public mask, or even a social mask. It's the person they present themselves to be. You do it too, I do it as well. It's the person everybody thinks we are. And so it's the person we reveal to the public. It's not whom we really are. It's not our real thoughts, our real behaviors, our real hope. Everybody wears this public mask, or this social mask, I call it, where it's who they want everybody to think they are. It's the best put version of themselves. And if you're not careful, you begin to compare your own real identity with other people's public mask. And this begins to create a pattern for you. Don't compare yourself. Most of the people you see on social media, or even in your personal life, or even when you go to lunch with them or see them at work, they're wearing what I would call a public mask. It's the best possible version that they can put out to themselves. And oftentimes what we do in life is we compare our real identity that we're working on and we're growing to their mask. And that's not fair to ourselves at all. Any comparison doesn't serve us. And it's oftentimes this comparison, when you're in a disagreement with somebody, it's the mask they're wearing compared to the identity you have, and then you begin to run a pattern to respond to it. It happens in fitness, in relationships, in money, and in business. Remember, you're in charge of controlling your own identity and growing your own identity and being aware of the patterns you have that do and do not serve you. Not comparing yourself to someone else's public representative. It's just the representative they're putting out there. It's not who they really are. And it's not something that you need to be aware of, because it's not something you can control. The more you can begin to delineate in life between things I can control and I cannot control would be to the extent that you're more productive and you're happier. You can control your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own identity, and your own patterns, not other people's. So speaking of these payoffs we talked about earlier, how can you begin to get the payoff you want from the new empowering pattern? And so a couple questions I want you to ask yourself today, because we do want more bliss. Since that's my word, I'm assuming you want more bliss after you've heard all the synonyms, and I know you want the antithesis to misery. So assuming you want more bliss in your life, decide to have it and take some actions towards getting it. So let me ask you a question. What are you doing currently to create more bliss in your life? What are the actions you're taking to give yourself more bliss. You are intentionally seeking more bliss, because bliss is going to lead to more wealth, more abundance, more fitness, more faith, better relationships, more happiness, more peace, more wins, more success, more recognition, more significance. So what are you consciously doing now that you've chosen bliss? What is the consistent action you're taking to create more in your life? What are you doing to give yourself bliss? Is it acknowledging victories you have? Is it giving gifts to other people of your belief and your hope? Is it lifting other people up? Is it taking a bath, getting a massage, taking a walk, going for a workout, winning, achieving, knocking goals off your list? What are the things you're doing to create bliss in your own life, number one? Number two question I have for you. What are you doing to intentionally create bliss in the lives of the people that you care about? Because this is the pathway to getting more of it ourselves. The more we begin to give other people bliss, the more we begin to consciously make choices that give bliss to other people in their lives, the more we begin to experience it in abundance ourselves. So what are you doing to help other people win? Other people contribute. Other people get significance and recognition. Other people have more peace and ecstasy and joy and passion in their lives. Because once you begin to create it for other people, when you're intentional about it, you'll have more of it yourself. These are the patterns that I'd like to see kick in for you. That when they kick in, you begin to run a pattern and a program that leads you to bliss, leads you to a win, leads you to increase, and also leads to it with someone in your life. That if you do have a conflict with somebody, that you run a pattern that eventually leads. Maybe it's understanding them, maybe it's confronting them, maybe it's talking about it. It's not always when you're in a disagreement that you lead to a win, that you must win this, that you must overcome the fact that they think this of you. What if you were consciously choosing every time you got into a disagreement with your spouse, this will eventually lead to more bliss? At least that was your outcome. Now the steps you take, it's probably going to be ugly in the beginning. You're probably going to have to some understanding. You may not even agree on everything. But if your intention is that it leads to bliss, rather than you winning, rather than you controlling them, rather than you making it go away, rather than you running a pattern, if when you're beginning to succeed in business, if your outcome is more bliss, more winning, you'll run a pattern that does more of that. If in your fitness, you're getting fit past where you've ever been before, and you're making a conscious decision, how can I get more bliss out of my fitness, rather than running this other pattern of sabotage? The circumstances may be the same. There may be some ugly patches, but you're now consciously choosing to run a program and a pattern that leads you to bliss, to victory, to the win, to fulfillment, whatever the emotion is you choose. Just making that choice gets you there, gets you closer to it, makes it an outcome. We are not, as human beings, doing enough conscious choosing of what we want in our lives. So what are you doing to create bliss in your own life? What are you doing to create bliss in other people's lives? And how blissful are you to be around? Just ask yourself that too. How blissful am I to be around? How joyful am I to be around? How much are people winning when they're around me? Whatever the emotion is you choose, how much of that do people experience when they're around me? People are great now because there's all this stuff in personal development about choosing to win, choosing your outcome, choosing your schedule, choosing your habits. I'm the master of teaching this. Go back through my content. Nobody puts out more specific content in teaching people the tools of how to choose the right habits, the right rituals, the right thinking, programming your brain. I do that at a level far beyond anybody out there. I'm not one of these influencers who just repeats, mindless memes all the time, or I don't repeat the same sayings over and over again. I don't just tell you very basic things you could read in any book or go to any seminar. I go very deep, very tactical, very strategic. But having said all of that, no one's talking about choosing the intentional emotion we want, which is why we do all this stuff in the first place. So that when the stimulus happens, the win or the loss, the adversity or the success, the disagreement or the tragedy, consciously choosing in that moment to chase bliss anyway. That it may be a while till I get to it, but this pattern I'm going to run, the choices I will make, the decisions I choose, even though there may be some bumps between there, the end result is going to be more bliss. Choosing that emotion as your outcome. And remember, not choosing it is a choice. You've chosen to let an unconscious pattern run. And you know where that's gotten you. It's gotten to where you are right now listening to this. Whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent in your life, your current level of happiness, of joy, of success, of fulfillment is exactly what you think you deserve. It's exactly what you think you're worth. It's a hard thing to accept, but in our lives, we are getting out of our life right now exactly what we believe we're worthy of, exactly what we think we deserve. Our life is a direct reflection of our identity, which is the thoughts, concepts, beliefs, values, and worth we hold true to be about ourselves. And so as hard as it is to accept, we're getting out of life right now what we believe we're worth. And we believe we're worth it because of these patterns and our identity and our lack of choosing to have what we want. Not just the material things, not just the body fat, not just the body weight, not just the amount of money, not just having the relationship, but choosing the emotion we want. The level above all this stuff I discuss, and the level way down here where the people just cover the basic stuff, then there's what I've been covering. The highest level is to choose the emotions we want to experience and to begin to run patterns that serve us and eliminate the ones who move us further from them. The final thing I want you to ask yourself today is we're talking a lot about these choices. I want you to evaluate for a second what these patterns are you're running, and when they begin to rear their head, just identify them and begin to make decisions and choices that create a new pattern. It's as simple as it is. It's not that complicated. You've fallen into these patterns because there's a payoff. And so as long as you begin to identify it when it's happening and you begin to create a new pattern that leads you to the choice you've chosen, which is the emotion you want. See, because these patterns you run that don't get you there, the minute you choose the emotion you want, you're conscious about it and intentional, you can't run this pattern once you identify it. And the power of choice is critical in our lives. I want you to think about something right now. What are 5 of the most important choices you've made in your life? Just think about that for a second. Begin to list them off in your head. 5 of the most important choices you've made in your life. Maybe it was a decision to get involved in a particular business or to leave a particular business. Maybe it was a decision to get involved with a particular person or to become uninvolved with a particular person. Maybe it was a friend that you chose to walk across the room and meet and it changed your life. Maybe it was a friend that you had to walk away from in order to improve your life. What are the 5 most important choices of your life? Just think about them for a second. And if you altered those 5 choices, good, bad, or indifferent, how different would your life be today? Because I'm a believer that there's everyday choices we make that when you stack them up, they make a massive difference in our life. But I'm also a believer that there are between 5 and 10, a handful of moments in everybody's life, that if we make the proper choices in those moments, the complete trajectory of our life changes. And I think as you just asked yourself that question, you may say there haven't been 5, there's been 2. What were they? And how'd they alter the direction of your life? Good, bad, or indifferent? A lady that picked me up a few weeks ago, an Uber driver, wonderful woman, but she was an older lady, and it was late at night when she picked me up, and I asked her why she was doing what she was doing. It wasn't that she was driving for Uber, because that's a choice, and I have friends that do it, that love it. It's extra money. They've done it in retirement. But I just had a sense that maybe she hadn't chosen it, because she was complaining about her back and that she had had back surgery. I thought, that's an interesting choice to be driving at 11 o'clock at night and her back was sore. And she shared with me that she had chosen to leave a spouse earlier in her life that she wished she'd have stayed with. And that it was a choice that altered the whole direction of her life. And I said, well, how did it alter the direction of your life? And she says, well, my ex, I moved away from my ex and my son wasn't around his father very much. And she said, I had no idea how that choice would impact him, but she said, the reason that I'm driving here and I moved is I lost my home. And I lost my home because my 18-year-old son one night chose to have a couple drinks. And he had 3 drinks at our house and I was at work. And my son chose to take the car out of the driveway. And he chose to drive. And 2 blocks from our house, he hit a family and killed somebody while drinking and driving. My son was a good boy. He had always got good grades, and he made the choice to do that night, and he's in prison. He's serving 8 years in prison. And I lost my home over the legal expenses, and we've moved to Las Vegas, and now I drive Uber because that's what I've got to do just to support my family. And it made me think, she said, the choice to leave my husband really affected my son. And I thought, yeah, the choice your son made really affected his life. Those were 2 life choices that both of them made that altered the direction of both of their lives. His choice, that good boy, made 1 choice that altered the direction of his life. And I think if you evaluate, there may not be something that dramatic, but there's been Probably 5 choices if you're my age, if you're in your 40s. There's probably been 5 major choices of your life. Maybe it's who you decided to marry or not marry, a relationship you got in or out of, a business you started or didn't start, something you left or began, a friend, a house you bought or didn't buy, an investment you did or didn't make. You know, a decision you made in your fitness one way or the other. Maybe it's stopping using alcohol or using too much alcohol. The first time you tried a drug that you're now addicted to. I don't know what those choices are, but those handful of choices alter the direction of your life. And I want you to begin to become conscious of choosing the emotions you want, because they will alter the choices you make every single day in the small choices. They will also alter the decisions you make on the 5 big ones in your life. If you're very clear about the emotions you want to experience, if you're very clear on the person you are as you build your identity, if you have those 2 things wired, I'm clear about the emotions I want to experience, and I'm clear about who I am and my identity and my worth and what I'm worthy of and what I deserve, they will guide you in making the right choices in the small ones and the big ones. They will guide you towards the right patterns. The answer to changing these patterns, the answer to making the right choices, is perfect and specific clarity on the emotions we want to have in our life on a regular basis and on who we are in our identity, so that we produce the lives we believe we deserve, that we're worthy of. They will be your compass in making the small and big choices. They will help guide the patterns. If you're somebody who's addicted to being blissful and happy, and you begin to run a pattern and program that you know doesn't lead you there, it sort of blows it up. It's like a virus in the program. You'll be aware and you can't run it. You begin to choose to create new patterns. If you've got an identity of somebody who's worthy of great relationships and abundance and success and peace and fitness and health and all of the great things, if that's your identity, you won't be able to run patterns that lead you in this place on a regular basis. There is something called cognitive dissonance, which is when we begin to behave in a way that's not consistent with our thoughts. And the antidote to that is both of these things combined. It's the ability to begin to choose consciously the emotions we want, combined with our identity. When you're conscious of choosing the emotions you want to experience, and you're completely conscious of choosing who you are and what you're worthy of deserving, you have to act in congruence with both of those combined. One missing from the other can cause us to make poor choices. Both of them missing is a choice not to choose, and will lead us into pain and mediocrity, worry, fear, and all the emotions we don't want. Having one of them in place will guide you to a decent destination. But when you have both combined, the identity and the choosing, the conscious intentions for the emotions you want, you begin to have great choices being made in your life on a very regular basis. Not every day, not every time, not every moment, but enough of the time where you make progress towards your dreams, progress towards the man or woman you're capable of becoming. And when you have the combination of these 2 things, these patterns begin to change. We begin to replace them. So I'd ask yourself today, what are the patterns you're running that don't serve you? Begin to be aware of those patterns. Know who your real identity is. Get conscious of choosing bliss over blank. See those patterns when they're happening. Interrupt them. Continue to work on your identity. These 2 things combined, I think, are the critical components to making the decisions and the choices in our life that when we look back, I don't want you to end up in your 80s or 90s and regret the choices you made. I want you to go back. I put it through what I call the rocking chair test, that someday for all of you who I love so much, who I believe in so much, I want that rocking chair test for you to pass it. And that is, I'm proud of the choices I made. My life wasn't perfect. I made some mistakes, but I chose the emotions I wanted. I worked on my identity. I created patterns that empowered me and the people around me. And you know what? By and large, I'm proud of the choices I made in my life. I'm proud of the man or woman I've become. That's how we know we've had a great life. I don't want you to be in that rocking chair someday and regret the choices you made, regret the patterns you ran, and that you just unconsciously went through your life without choosing the direction of it, choosing the decisions, choosing the emotions, choosing to be the man or woman you're worthy of, choosing the life you deserve. The final piece of the puzzle today is, what are the 3 to 5 choices you must make in order to create the life you want? Right now, what are the choices you must make? The big ones the people that need to be in your life or out of your life, the patterns you will no longer run again, the choice perhaps to work on your identity like you never have before. Evaluate what the 3 to 5 decisions are you've made so far in your life that have taken you a certain direction, or what are the 3 to 5 you need to make in order to change your life and take it in the direction you want. These patterns will lose their power over you. Your identity and your conscious choice will begin to take charge, and I know you're going to have more happiness and produce more results and have a much better life, and that's what I wish for you. So I have a funny feeling that today impacted you on a deep level, because we all have these patterns we need to look at. We all need to consciously choose the emotions we want, and I have a feeling that it made a difference in your life.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, I get asked often, what are some of the common traits between the peak performers or happy people that have been on your show, whether it be an athlete or an entertainer, business person, influencer? You know, what do they have in common? And one of the things most of them have in common is they've been in therapy. And, you know, whether or not you've got something you just want to talk through and kind of work out loud, or you've got something really deep going on in your life that you need help with, I really want to recommend you do therapy. And I love BetterHelp because it can be done online. They'll connect you with a licensed therapist. And if you don't click with that person, you can switch with them. And so learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/EdShow today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/EdShow. What I want you to write down, I think this will just, you know, potentially really serve you, is that this, write this down. Success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis. Success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis. Where'd I get that from? It's not mine. It's actually out of the book, Think and Grow Rich, that I've just referenced earlier. One of the original versions. I'm holding up my dear friend Robin Sharma sent to me. And so that is not my quote. I can't stand when people use my content and quotes and don't give me credit. That's not my quote. That's out of Think and Grow Rich. But the theme of today is that, listen, success requires no apologies and failure permits no alibis. We can't be making alibis. And so how do we create change in our life? How do we make moves through this difficult times? Because no matter what time you're listening to this, it'll be trying. There's always things to overcome. That's what life's about. One of the things in Think and Grow Rich that I love is in the book, this is so profound, and I hope this gives you hope, that in the book, he talks about going through adversity, going through trials and tribulations. And he ends up saying in the book that if you can get to the other side of these trials, if you don't quit, that you get introduced to your other self, your other self. And so what if it is that all of the tragedies, trials, tribulations, difficulties in our lives are all set up there so that on the other side of it, there's another version of us. On the other side of it, we get introduced to our other self. I'm 51 years old when this comes out, and I must tell you that I've been introduced to many different versions of me. And the only way I got to those versions of me was to have to go through something difficult that tried me, that pushed me, that caused me to question myself, doubt myself, almost give in, almost resist. If you think about it for you, the things you have achieved in your life, where you are today, this version of you has been put together, has been developed, has been created because of the things you learned, the things you went through, the lessons you gained through difficult times. So when you're hitting these difficult times, just remember on the other side of this time, whatever it is for you, is your other self. How beautiful is that? And when you step back and look at one's entire life, even if you have children and you all were a child at one point, think about the difficult things and you got introduced to that other version of you. I remember going to high school so scared. There was this whole thing when I was going to high school, they would put the freshmen in trash cans, and I didn't know anybody, and, was anybody going to like me? But the person who walked in my freshman year of high school, I think you'll agree, a totally different person walked out my senior year. I got introduced to my other self. And then when I started my business journey, there's one guy that started, and then after the first trial and tribulation I pushed through, I got introduced to another self of me, and then another self, and then another self, and then another self. In relationships, you've been introduced to other selves of you once you've gotten through them or learned from them. And so what you're going through right now, the beauty of it is it's preparing this other self, this better version of you. And you got to remind yourself of this because it's so easy not to want to outlast the temporary. I did a big, long coaching call with the Arte Syndicate on this. And I'm not going to get into what I covered there. I'm going to cover different things today. But I just want you to think about this for a second. Without it, it's just you all the way through life. There's no change. There's no growth. So this trial, this thing that you're going through, or maybe just this thing you're trying to accomplish, maybe it doesn't even feel trying. Maybe you're just trying to accomplish something that's difficult, right? The other self is on the other side of that. And I just want to tell you, chase that version of you, chase that person, embrace it. And when you see this adversity coming at you, right? See it for what it really is. It's this introduction to the new you waiting for you on the other side of it. I love one of the things, I'm going to read to you out of Napoleon Hill's book a little bit right here. But he says, and again, a lot of this stuff was written for, back in the day where he would say men instead of people. But he says, if the first plan which you adopt does not work successfully, replace it with a new plan. If this plan fails to work, replace it, and in turn with it another, and so on until you find a plan which does work. Right here is at the point at which the majority of people meet with failure because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of the old ones which fail. The most intelligent man living cannot succeed in accumulating money nor in any other undertaking without plans which are practical and workable. And his point in the chapter was, this is where most people quit. This is where most people give in. They surrender at the sign of adversity rather than pivot, rather than innovate, rather than create a new plan. They give in. And what costs you when you give in is you rob the world and you of this other self. Those are my words, not him in this case. But that's what gets robbed. And quitting becomes a habit. It's habitual. When you quit on one thing, you'll quit on other things. And so finish, adapt all the time in your life. I want to share something with you. Why do we get so worked up? Let me share something with you. You have emotions that you're familiar with, okay? And some of these emotions serve you and some of them don't serve you. It's called your emotional home is what I call it. And oftentimes in our lives, we will find a way to get that emotion we're addicted to. Our heart and our emotions move towards what we are most familiar with. I'm going to cover this in 2 places today for you. And I hope that this is one of these life-changing shows where you're like, yeah, man, I'm glad he didn't interview somebody today. This is better. So I have to say this to you. You have an emotional home. And it's important to take an inventory of what is that home, because you find a way to get it every week, whatever those emotions are. They could be peace, joy, ecstasy, passion, right? All those great emotions that you could have. And by the way, they aren't good and bad. Just some serve us and some don't. Then there's other ones: pain, fear, anxiety, worry, depression, frustration, anger. You all know people, as I described those emotions, you thought of different people, didn't you? When I said anger, you thought of someone who's regularly angry. When I said fearful or depressed, you thought of somebody. Maybe you thought of you. And so if you have this primary emotion that you're getting on a regular basis, you find a way to get it, don't you? You do. No matter what's going on, you find a way at some point during your week to get your fear. Why? Because it's familiar. And we move towards what's familiar. This is how human beings are. So the reason we want to go through difficulties is because if at the other end of that we can get another self, maybe we can get another emotion. Because self is really emotions. What you really don't want is a jet or cash. You want how you think that will make you feel. What you really don't want is just a relationship. It's how you think the relationship will make you feel. You don't just want to win that contest you're in right now. It's how you think it'll make you feel. So what you're chasing is the emotions. See, I know people with absolutely no money who feel rich. I know a bunch of people with a lot of money who feel broke, right? So what we're really chasing is our emotions. So for me, how do you do that? You become very intentional about what they are. You become intentional. My primary emotion I'm chasing right now that I can experience anytime I want, but I don't have to chase it. That word's probably not well said. I can experience anytime I want because it exists within me is peace. And when I'm not getting peace, I get intentional about seeking it. I'm not going to do things in my life anymore that on the other end of it can't acquire me more peace. I may lack some as I do it, but I'm going to get more of it on the other side of it. Starting to become intentional. And I'll share with you, we all have emotions that don't serve us. We all do. One of mine is chaos. I love chaos. Isn't that interesting? I love chaos. I've just realized this as an adult. Like, I always create chaos in my life. Why? I thrive. I always say I thrive in chaos because I do. I'm familiar with it. Why do I always create chaos? Even when things are great, it's like, nope, I got to do this. I got to do that. Create a chaotic state. I create chaos around me. I've become aware of this. Why? Because chaos is familiar to me. Why is chaos familiar to me? Because to some extent in my childhood, it was chaotic. Most of you know that my dad was an alcoholic, greatest guy in the world, sober for 35 years after that. But in my early upbringing, it was chaotic. It was unstable. I didn't know, is he coming home? Is he not coming home? What mood's he going to be in? Are mom and dad going to stay married? All those kinds of things. And it was chaotic. And I became familiar with chaos. And so I find a way in my given week or my month or my day to find chaos, don't I? And I do. Anybody that knows me knows that's true. And I thrive in it. Chaos, by the way, can be used positively. Chaos has caused me to become wealthy. Chaos has caused me to not want to be overweight and to be fit. Sometimes that chaos, I've learned to thrive in it. But you have to ask yourself, and I had to ask myself, do I want to live all my life in chaos? No. And then I got intentional. If chaos doesn't serve me that way, what emotions do I want? I want more joy. I want more laughter. I want more peace. And so I'm intentional about getting it, and I'm aware when I'm starting to generate chaos unintentionally. And that awareness for me, that awareness causes it to lose its power over me. So in your case, I would ask you, what emotion is your emotional home that you get the most regularly? Is it really joy? Is it really peace? Is it really ecstasy, passion, right? Or do you get a little bit familiar with worry, anger, frustration, melancholy, whatever you want to call it, fear, right? And once you know that, ask yourself, what are the emotions I would want to experience on a regular basis? And get intentional about them and become aware when you're doing the ones you don't think serve you. All right. And then ask yourself this, what would I have to think or believe in order to generate that emotion? Right? Because a lot of times we have thoughts that don't serve us. Thoughts generate emotions, right? It's not an event that generates the quality of our life. There's an event, then there is our perception of the event, our thought about it, which creates the emotion. So it's not the events of our lives. You can be going through a very difficult time and have peace. You can go through a very difficult time and feel strong. It's being intentional about it. And so I would challenge you to begin to think about, what would I need to think? What do I normally think that causes me? And I'm going to tell you in a minute, what do I normally think that causes me to get this emotion that creates stress for me? And what would I need to think in order to get the ones I want when the same stimulus happens? So in Think and Grow Rich, he says there are 6 basic fears. By the way, in The Power of One More, I show you how to overcome these fears with daily strategies. So it's not just the thought, it's the action you would take. I mirror the thought in congruency with the action. And that's why The Power of One More is such a really unique book. Having said that, these are the 6 basic fears according to Napoleon Hill, and they're really interesting. He says, there are 6 basic fears with some combination of which every human suffers at one time or another. Most people are fortunate if they do not suffer from the entire 6. Named in the order of their most common appearance, they are, this is interesting, in sequence. The number 1 fear is the fear of poverty. And just process that. Do you have the fear of poverty? Do you have the fear that whatever you're going through right now, you're going to be broke? You're going to have the fear that you're going to run out of money, that you're not going to eat, or whatever it might be. The fear of poverty. Number 2, the fear of criticism. Right? By the way, these are the bottom, not the top, excuse me. The fear of criticism. Do you have any of that? The fear of ill health. Okay, so those are the bottom 3, not the top 3. Bottom 3. 4th fear, the fear of loss of love of someone. In other words, someone you love will no longer love you. Okay. 5, the fear of old age, getting old and missing your prime, missing your moment, missing your life. And then lastly, the fear of death. And so those are the 6 fears. Poverty, criticism, bad health, loss of the love of someone, old age, and death. And usually, I think you'll find that when you're experiencing stress and anxiety, it's born out of one of those fears. And I know you're sitting there going, Ed, this is damn good. Thank you for doing the show today. I hope you are. And if you do feel that, share it. Fastest growing show in the world, share it. So I'm aware of the fears that I have. And that's why success requires no apologies. I'm not worried about criticism. And failure permits no alibis. There are no alibis. There are no excuses. There just aren't any. And you go, but Ed, you don't understand. I do have this excuse. I do have this issue. I do have this situation that isn't fair for me. By the way, you're probably right. And if you think it, you're definitely right. What you have to ask yourself is, does it serve you to believe that? Or what would you need to believe in spite of that? If you say, well, hey, I started too late. I don't have enough money. What if you started to think, man, what a story this is going to be that I started with no money? Or you know what? I'm a particular group of people that's marginalized and it's more difficult for me. I would just submit to you that isn't the story going to be sweeter when you do win? Isn't it going to even be more inspiring when you do win? Isn't it going to move more people? Isn't your test going to be your testimony? Whatever this thing is, that is the alibi that you have in your life, whatever it is, someone hurt me, this overcame, I'm in this situation, you don't understand my health situation. Listen, If it serves you to believe that, keep believing it. But as your friend and your coach and a mentor to you and someone who loves you and cares about you, I would say this does not serve you, even if it's true. Even if it's true. What would you need to believe about it that now gives you power instead of kryptonite? And you begin to ask yourself these questions. So, you're going to show up. So that's one thing. You're going to show up 20 years from now somewhere. The question is where? And what I would submit to you is that one of the ways out of difficult times is huge, bold, God-sized dreams. Like, what is your huge, bold, the one you're embarrassed to tell people, the huge, bold, God-sized dream in your life? And the more of it you begin to project into that dream state of what you want in your life, the more it gives you the inspiration. If your dreams are bigger than the adversity, you'll get through it. But the minute that adversity, those emotions are bigger than where you're going, bigger than your dreams, you're toast. You got to reevaluate that. You got to look at it. You got to say, wait a minute, what's my big dream? What's my big goal? What's that big emotion? What's that thing? What's that place? What's that person? What's that contribution? Whatever it might be. And you got to begin to obsess about it, because what I said earlier is true. Your mind moves towards what it's most familiar with. So if you're most familiar with your fears, those 6 fears, or these emotions you don't want, or your problems, or your setbacks, or the things that are not in your favor, then you're going to move towards them. Let me say that to you again. You may be right about this adversity. You may be right about your circumstance. You may be right about all that. But does it serve you to believe it? Because the way the mind works is it moves towards what it's most familiar with. And the reason some people are successful and most aren't is the successful people have the ability to begin to program into their mind the things they want, the dreams they have, over and over and over, because they know this to be true. They belong in their dreams. Their dreams are not some hallucination. They're not a joke. God gave you those dreams as a glimpse, as a preview of what's possible in your life. And the more you understand, these dreams don't just come from me. How do I have these dreams? Where'd they come from? They come from God in your life, or whatever you believe about that. I'm a Christian. I believe they come straight from Jesus, straight from God. But whatever your faith is, the universe, whatever you believe, they come from outside of you, and they're not a joke. They're a preview of what's possible. And the more you move towards those thoughts, those dreams in faith, boldly, strong, and not towards the 6 fears you have or this circumstance. And I'm not talking about don't deal with reality. I'm not saying, I already said, you need to pivot. You need to course correct. You need a better plan. Clearly, you need a better plan. But what you don't need is to be moving towards the thoughts that don't serve you, because you keep getting them, don't you? You keep drawing the circumstances into your life that don't serve you, because your mind moves you towards what you're familiar with. Please, sister, I love you. Please, brother, listen to what I'm saying. Begin to feed these thoughts to you regularly and begin to take the actions in congruency with them. And when you begin to think and act in congruency, you become a force in the world that is unstoppable eventually, if you can outlast the temporary, not right away. See, there's 2 things people lack. The Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. People lack vision, but oftentimes when they get a vision, the other thing that they suffer from is depth perception issues. They think it's further than it is. They think they're further away than they really are, and so they pace themselves and they act like it, and they don't let their mind go there regularly, and so they constantly stay in a perpetual state of being far from it. The premise of my book, The Power of One More, is very simple when you get it, and it's this: you're a lot closer to your dreams than you think. You're a lot closer to these emotions, these feelings, that life, that other self than you think you are. And let me tell you what you are. You're one decision away, one possible meeting, one relationship, one thought, one emotion, one strategy in my new book away from changing it. You're a lot closer than you think. So stop thinking it's so far away, and stop thinking about all the things all the time that don't serve you. Right? By the way, what is thinking? Ed, how do I think better? What's a thought? A thought is the process of asking yourself a question and answering it. So ask yourself better questions, and you will have better thoughts and better answers. So if you do have this detriment, that's this thing that's just, it's a hindrance, and you know it's a hindrance, and it's a challenge, or you're going through something, right? That's okay. The question is, ask yourself a better question about it. Instead of saying, that's why I'm going to lose, it's, hey, how can I overcome this? What are the answers to this? Who are people like me that have won? What is my story going to look like when I win? How's it going to feel when I get there? What's the tactic or strategy that I need to implement to overcome this that other people don't, but I'm going to, because I deserve to get there, because these dreams are a preview of who I'm supposed to be. So get these familiar thoughts, get these familiar emotions. Know that all pain is temporary. Outlast the temporary.
I wanted to talk about success versus greatness because most of my life, I just wanted to be successful. And I was like, achieve, set a big goal, spend 10 years and do whatever it takes to make it happen. And that's what caused me to be angry after I would accomplish it. And so I just set bigger goals. And I was like, okay, I'm still not enough, but I got to make bigger goals. And what I realized is that I had success all wrong. I thought I wanted success, but what I really wanted was greatness, because success alone is selfish in my mind at this stage. And maybe I'm off, but this is my thoughts.
You're not off at all.
Success by itself is selfish because it's about my goals and my dreams. Greatness is about including my goals and dreams in the service of those around me, using them to impact my friends, family, or communities in a positive way as well, so that they are elevated also. So it's including your goals, dreams, and success, but also making it about others winning with you. For me, that's greatness versus success.
Oh my gosh. We were at a thing recently with a group of people, and it ended up you had to leave, and so we all sort of poured some
so
love
bummed I
onto you.
missed because I wanted to hear your
good.
message.
It was actually
I know.
good. It was good. But we were all talking about, after you left, the wisdom. This is an interesting conversation, everybody, for me, because a lot of these, there's a few people in this world that, like, I don't know, they're my friends, but also I look at them almost like my sons because I know the impact they can make in the world, and you're one of them. Like, I'm so excited about the impact. This distinction that you just described on my show, no one has ever said to me in my life. The difference between success and greatness. And the picture you just painted is some of the most there's one of the most profound things anyone's ever said to me in my freaking life.
Wow.
Because I produced a lot of success in my life, and it wasn't until I got much later in my life, and I didn't know how to define it. You just did. It's not what I wanted. I wanted greatness. And the more I moved towards what you've described as greatness, my fulfillment level, my peace, and ironically, the things that I thought I wanted success-wise expanded exponentially.
You made more money.
Way
You
more.
accomplished
Way more. I wish someone would have told me this when I was young, and
know.
I'm so grateful that people are hearing this from you. There's just a part of me that's just very proud of you because I know this work and the difference that it could make. It's almost like it's elevating the conversation to a place it's not been, and that's why I'm so excited about what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Before you go into the next thing, I wanted to, you're someone, I think we met, 5 years ago?
Yeah,
6 years
6
ago?
years, maybe.
I remember hearing about you 6 months before I met you because I was at my friend's wedding on the lake that you have a house.
Yeah.
And I go, whose house is that? Because it's like literally right across from his was yours. And it's like, I was like, this is epic. And he goes, this guy, Ed Mylett. And I go, who? And he goes, I think he's kind of like in your space. Like, he's an entrepreneur, speaker, this guy. I mean, in a whole nother league than me, but yes, in the same field. And I go, I've never heard of this guy. Never heard of Ed Mylett.
That was when I was becoming a public person.
And I felt like I knew everyone in this space or knew of.
Right.
Like, I'm pretty in tune to like who's putting out content and what's happening in the space. So I was like, I don't know who this guy is. And I think, if I'm reflecting on it, it sounds like you were driven by success before that moment, and then you started to have a transition period. And I think you told me, you're speaking with Tony and other people that were like, hey, it's time to really give back and serve and put yourself out there as a public voice. And that sounds like when everything even went further for you, because you said, I'm here to serve as well. And not that you weren't serving before, but you used your voice more.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a public person.
Right.
I didn't want to inconvenience myself, and that's when he called me out on it. And the more I began to realize that if I thought I was inconveniencing myself in the service of others, now I'm stepping towards greatness.
Yes.
And you just described it, and then that's when you and I have become, such dear friends.
If someone was fortunate enough to get to do what I did today, and they were an entrepreneur, I don't care if they're a 65-year-old entrepreneur. Since I heard what Ed said earlier about renting my life. I want to own my life again. But maybe they're not ever going to be an entrepreneur. They're 20 years old, but they'd like to become one. They've never been one before. They said, I'd like to turn my life around. I'd love to walk in somewhere, my own building that you own here, and have all these cars, or have my version of heaven.
Sure.
But I'm a little bit lost right now. Would you send them back to that notepad of yours? What would your advice be? If they could get 2 minutes with Manny Koshman, what would he say to them in order to turn their life around? What would your advice be to them?
Well, first of all, work out. Start working out. Build your mindset. Write your goals down. I mean, what's your long-term vision, right? I mean, you can't travel across the country in the dark. You got to know where you want to go, right? And so writing your goals down, start working out, improving your physique, your mind, get knowledgeable, surround yourself with new set of friends that can teach you something new. But at the end of the day, gear up to invest in real estate. Doesn't matter what trade you're in. You wait for recessions. When something drops 40%, buy it.
Yeah.
Just wait. It's going to come back up that 40%. You just made 40%. It's just not now. Just wait, 4 or 5 years. You already made it. You make your money on the buy. Yeah, and that's my first book I wrote. Yeah. So I made all my money in recessions. I mean, I don't enjoy this upswing we've had. It's been very depressing for me because I make my money in recessions. Everything you see that in real estate I've accumulated, it's been, the building you're sitting in here, I bought this in 2011. It was bank owned, boarded up. I bought it from Wells Fargo for 3.1 million or 3.3 million. Right. It's worth triple that.
It's worth triple. And by the way, without saying the location, would you tell me about that one building that was possibly a third time for you? Would you mind sharing that story?
So there was a high-rise building I bought in 2005, 2 high-rise buildings in 2005. I bought in Houston for 34 million. I bought it for 27 million, sold it for 34 million in 2007. And then I bought it back from mortgage servicers in 2011. And I sold it in 2014 for 36 million. And again, it's getting foreclosed, so I may buy it for the 3rd time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I wonder if it's in Garrett's World Book for the same guy to buy the same building 3 times.
That would be unbelievable, right? I think there's so many gems and so many tips today. You've just said so many things that fascinate me. But the thing that fascinates me the most about you, brother, is when I walked in here, because I knew a little bit of the story, to think a young man from Iran ends up coming here and in a couple weeks is living in a car with his family. Do you not see the metaphor of this? You lived in a car and now...
And now I got, all this. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm, hoarding these cars. I don't know. But that's funny because that was my first home and I am emotionally attached to some of these cars, but again, at the right price, I would sell anything. The only thing that's not for sale is my wife and kids. But there may be a connection there. I don't know. I never thought about that.
It's unbelievable that you have one of the greatest car collections on the planet, and you were once living in one, brother. You are the American dream personified. And what I love about it is like you're just starting. Like this is the beginning.
Yeah, I'm just getting warmed up.
Yeah, and
I am so excited for the future.
I could see it. And you have this energy about you too, and you have this thing that you like I want to smile.
Yeah,
like you're like a light, like you're a light, and it's interesting because of the business that you're in too. But everybody, he said another thing here I just want to finish with too. And he said something about recessions, and I don't know when they are, or how they happen. But a lot of you are listening to this thinking, man, I've missed my moment.
No,
and you haven't, right? Because the truth of the matter is that actually what it's really good for you right now that you haven't won because you might have had everything go backwards on you anyway. So the truth is, if you start to accumulate now, you could magnify and multiply your wealth over the next many years, possibly if you do the right things, and a factor that you can't even believe because of what Manny has described here today. So life has not passed all these people by, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, you feel like if someone's listening to this right now and they apply the things that you've talked about, there's no reason why their drawings can't come true in their life.
I don't want to say it's guaranteed, but if you buy something low and sell it high, you're gonna make money.
It's a fact, right?
And a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't afford the house. I have no money." Well, get a job, walk into a lender, be a Wells Fargo, say, "Hey, I've had this job for 2 years. How much do I qualify?" They'll pre-qualify you. They say, "Okay, you can borrow a $100,000 home loan." Then you wait for recession. Keep your job. Don't quit. You wait for recession. If something drops from $100,000 to $65,000. Go write an offer. You just bought a house, FHA loan, 3% down. I'm sure you have enough time to raise your 3% down payment, and that's your first property. Goes up, sell it, and you can upgrade to a house.